Thank you. So today we're going to be talking about road ghosts. Now, for those who don't know why we're talking about road ghosts, well, here's the thing. So Caroline and I have now been managing the Seriously Strange and the Paranormal Webinars talks now for a year when it comes to Halloween this year. So, and one of the jokes we've always had is that, you know, should we never have a speaker for the week, or should anyone not turn up, you're going to have to listen to our dulcet tones talk about road ghosts. And of course, over the last few weeks, people have been saying, but we want road ghosts. But we want road ghosts. So we thought, actually, you know what? We'll do a road ghosts talk. So we thought we would pull in our resources from our areas and talk about our local, regional road ghosts and talk about some of the ones as well along the way. So thank you very much for joining us here today. Caroline, have you got anything to add and throw into our road ghost mix today?
No, I was actually very pleasantly surprised. I forgot who it was that started off the conversation. It might be, let's name him. It might have either been Dan or Darren that said, no, we want road ghosts, and then everybody else followed through with that one. So luckily, I had written an article about a year and a bit ago for Haunted Magazine. So sorry if you read it, but hopefully you've got Alzheimer's enough that your memory is not very good and it's all fresh and new for you. I have thrown a couple of new things in there. You speak and we listen. So you ask for road ghosts and you're getting it.
Good. You know, of course, it's the Halloween month. It's the month of October. We are fully aware that everyone has got activities going on and people have some interesting, fun times coming ahead for this particular month. And we wanted to make this month a little bit special, do some things a little bit out of the mix to what we normally would do. So thank you once again. So I guess what we should do, we should talk about ASSAP first of all, in terms of our agenda, get the big thing off the table. So the ASSAP Seriously Strange magazine is completed, it is finished. So yes, it is due to go to the printers this week. So that means it will be delivered from our printers to, I believe, Norrie Miles, who will then distribute it to our membership and community. So if you're an ASSAP member, you'll get that in a physical form if you're a physical member, or you'll get it in the form of a PDF to either the members area of the ASSAP website or to your email inbox, should you wish it that way. Because, of course, I did manage to tighten it up. So it's actually under 25 megabytes. So actually it can be emailed as well. And also we can put that up online. So I guess what's left for me to do is to introduce our first speaker. That is one of us. So we tossed a coin literally before we started bringing you all in now. So Caroline is going to be taking the bike first, shall we say, on the road. Now, I don't know about you. I've got me a little prop in the background. I brought a car. I was going to get a high-vis vest in the back, but I didn't have time to get one. So let's talk about Caroline. And Caroline has been our manager of the webinars now for 1 year. She's done an amazing job keeping all of our guests. And to my understanding, we made the joke here that what happens when a guest can't make it? That hasn't actually happened. Every guest who's signed up to become a member of our speakers has never actually backed away. Well, there's always been consistent thread. We've always managed to have a talk every single week. And no one's ever backed down so far. So well done. You've been keeping them on their toes. So Caroline is an published writer and soon to be published author. She lives in Somerset, UK, and she contributes to a number of magazines and media outlets while researching true crime cases and paranormal content for TV companies, including documentaries and series. She is the co-host, of course, here of Seriously Strange and the ASSAP Paranormal Webinars. She platforms academics, experts, enthusiasts to our community, and she has a frequent media presence on TV, radio, podcasts, and conference talks. And she's earned her respect as a paranormal investigator and historical writer and interviewer. And that passion lies in her ethical, scientific approach to investigations, accurate historical recordings, and openly sharing findings. I think that encapsulates you now, doesn't it?
I hope so.
So, my dear, would you share your screen? I know you have a presentation ready to roll in the back there that you've been working on all week, as I know I have. So if you were to share first then, my dear, tell us all about the road ghosts and the stories that you have from your neck of the woods.
So, yes, welcome to this evening, Road Ghost of Somerset, by me, Caroline McKendrick Gibson. Thank you for inviting me, Christian. Okay, so these paranormal enthusiasts amongst you and researchers will all have heard numerous stories and tales of road ghosts. The accounts are either the urban myth stories that we would tell each other while growing up, during sleepovers, while hiding under our blankets with torches shining bright to highlight our terrified faces, or while roasting marshmallows around the soaring, crackling campfires. We would tell each other scary, spooky accounts of black dogs roaming the countryside roads looking for their next unsuspecting victim, and then kill them and drag them back to their lair. Or we would tell tales of mutant humans sitting on top of broken down vehicles in a lay-by with the decapitated head of the driver held high, dripping its contents all over the top of the roof in time with the heavy raindrops falling on the car roof. Oh, the good old days of the campfire and the tales we used to tell. And then we used to have the accounts of an undead headless horseman that was galloping his black steed furiously down the narrow lanes looking for his missing head, just like the one that was witnessed by Johnny Depp's character Ichabod Crane in the film Sleepy Hollow. Or we could have accounts of the personal experiences that have been reported over the years from members of the public. These are large in quantity, and the types of the ghosts that have been reported are various. The UK is rich in phenomenal amount of reported road ghosts, and they are held on record, and Somerset is very lucky to have a very large amount of these reported sightings. So paranormal visitors regularly make pilgrimages to the areas of these reports, hoping to be a present spectator when the apparition aligns to show themselves. So I'm going to go through some of these reported sightings in Somerset. Some you might have heard of, and I know that some you won't have. So the first one here is a ghost of Thomas Pocock. For centuries now, reports have circulated about the ghostly horseman who appears along various parts of the A39 in Somerset. The tale of the infamous 1700s highwayman Thomas Pocock, or perhaps more accurately, his ghost, is well known in the villages between Bridgewater and Street. Legend has it that Thomas Pocock was said to be a dishevelled and unwashed man who was believed to have lived in caves near to Chiltern Priory. He lived in the caves for years in order that he could escape capture of his unlawful deeds. Pocock, though, was thought by locals to have been a bit of a Robin Hood type hero. He would steal from the rich and share his ill-gotten gains with the poor, and he would only pick on the wealthy male travellers that would happen across his pathway or he would encounter. Eventually, Pocock was caught red-handed and caught in the act and was cornered by the lawmen, who severely beat him to death and hanged him. Pocock's deathly spectre has been spotted near Ashcott, Chiltern, in Somerset, and he rides, allegedly, on his jet-black horse. He's been seen on numerous occasions over the years. The description of the apparition has been similar in all reports and has been described as a male wearing a light sandy brown long jacket and a black hat, and witnesses described that the horse was galloping furiously but getting nowhere, just galloping on the spot, and that the male was slumped forward in the saddle as though he was injured. Now, is he reliving the fateful last attempt to escape the clutches of the lawmen, or is he trying to return to the safety of his comfort of his caves? Because of his kindness that Pocock showed to the poor, in the years after his death, the locals used to sing a song that was dedicated to this infamous character, whilst they brought in the harvest. Rhine my bones, Rhine the moon shines bright, Pocock in his cave, his presence is light. But when the night is murky and dark, he's off for his steed, blithe as a lark. I will leave this thought sat with you, but if you find yourself driving along this stretch of the road during the harvest moon and you hear a horse's hooves in the distance, remember, keep your wallet hidden and your windows up. Moving on, the next case I'm going to give you is the Wind Whistle Hill. The A30 has been a hotbed of reports of strange happenings over the years. The first book that was published, making these
signed and posted on Twitter. They're extensive.
Okay, sorry about that. I'll start from the beginning. The A30 has been a hotbed of reports of strange happenings over the years. The first book that was published making these extraordinary claims was in 1662, and the claims have continued to be made since. The reports range from various UFO sightings and interactions, unknown lights hovering over the hills, and tales of murdering highwaymen and strange ghostly hitchhikers at the side of the road. Case 2 that we're going to discuss is the long-legged male on Wind Whistle Hill. So one puzzling case that was reported by a local family was that they all experienced seeing bright orange unknown lights hovering over them whilst they drove their car on the hill, and the family all losing a space of approximately half an hour in time. But another, far more chilling incident was encountered by the same family a few days afterwards at the same location. The family described seeing two people on the left-hand side of the road. They were stood just off of the verge. One man was standing and one was laying down. It was described by the family that the person standing stepped out into the road. But what puzzled them greatly was that one foot of the person remained on the verge and the other foot had stretched over the central line of the road. They described that person as being abnormally tall, with legs that were horrendously long and thin, and there was no way that someone could have possibly have had legs that long. They swerved to avoid the person and they carried on driving and didn't look back. Okay, we're going to stay within the Wind Whistle Hill, exactly the same area, bar from a few hundred feet. And as I said at the beginning of this talk, this area has had phenomenal amount of reported alleged paranormal activity ranging back over many, many years. So during my research into this area, whilst I was carrying out investigations for the Wind Whistle Public House, I had many stories told to me during this time, interviews with locals and visitors to the pub alike. One story kept resurfacing and it was told to me numerous amounts of time. And that was that a male wearing a 70s style dark brown suit, walking dangerously on the grass verge along the A30 Wind Whistle Hill area, and he was thumbing a lift. The recounts of this tale by numerous individuals may vary. They may vary in time of the day, of the year that it happened, or how far along this road they had witnessed this chap. But details remain very similar. What they used to say, and I have quotes, "I saw this man thumbing a lift near the pub, but what drew my attention more was that he was wearing old-fashioned clothing, I'd say from the 1970s. Another quote, "We were travelling up the road and saw a man hitchhiking. He looked out of place with his clothes. They weren't modern. As we pulled closer, he just vanished." So these sightings appear to be very common with the locals and regular users of the road. Nothing unusual from the recounts of the many other suspected road ghosts over the different years and different places, you're probably thinking, except when people knew that I was researching the pub, the history and the area, they were very forthcoming with these recounts, but they wanted to talk in private, as though they were ashamed or embarrassed. And then the more sinister of the sightings came to light. Many people told of this experience, with one difference: the hitchhiker getting into the car with them. So he either stopped, asked for a lift to the pub, and then vanished from the back of the seat before the car had dropped them off at their requested destination. Or far more disturbingly, they told the tale of seeing a male fitting the description, thumbing for a lift in that area, and they did not have any intentions on stopping for an unknown male at the side of the road. So they slowed a little and they gave a wide pass as they went by, only then to have seen the male sat on the rear seat of their car looking at them in the mirror. You could tell by the tonal raise and the speed increase in their voice when they were recounting these information stories to me that it still affected them today when they were recalling the information. I was discussing this reported ghost sighting with somebody who was working on my renovations in my home around 2018, I think it was. And I said I couldn't find any relevant information or facts within history laying down tragic events in the 1970s that could fit this event. He responded straight away and said, my aunt and uncle know about this. They were with the chap and they were friends with him that died that night tragically on that spot in the 1970s. He got out his phone from his pocket and he called them straight away. And during a further conversation, I carried out an interview to get their account of the tragic night and how they lost a very close friend. Now, before I go any further, I will just point out that I will anonymise all names of those involved and the particular date out of respect, because of the relatively short time of passing of this gentleman, he will probably still have family living. But this story is worthy of bringing to the public domain because of the very unusual details. So this is the Wind Whistle pub itself. I'll come back to this one. I think that's the one, isn't it? No, that's right. So this is the Wind Whistle pub itself. And what I'm going to tell you, I'll explain it, then I'll come back and show you on the picture. So during a date in the 1970s, and we're going to call them Mrs. Janet Smith and Mr. John Smith, they had been enjoying an evening in a theatre in Taunton, and they had just arrived back home in Chard. That's the next village along, or the next town along from this area, when the phone had rung. And it was a friend of theirs, and we're going to call this chap Mr. Peter Paul. And he asked if they were going to pop to the Wind Whistle pub for a drink as he was going there. Mr. and Mrs. Smith arrived at the pub to find Mr. Paul already inside with a pint. They spent a nice time catching up with their friend. Now, this is where it gets weird. When it was time to leave, Mr. and Mrs. Smith said their goodbyes, leaving Mr. Paul still drinking an almost full pint. They went directly to the car in the car park. They pulled out of the car park with no distractions or delays, and they turned right onto the road, onto the A30, heading towards Chard. Almost immediately, they were dazzled by bright car headlights shining directly at them, and it appears to be a car on their side of the road that had crashed and was impacted into trees. As they drew up alongside, they pulled over to help the person in the car. And as the headlights were no longer dazzling them, they could see that it was their friend's car, Mr. Paul Peters' car. The car was steaming from the impact that it had just had with the trees, and their friend unfortunately had died in the accident. After the emergency services had left and the scene was cleared, they returned home. While recounting the incident, they looked at each other, dumbfounded, absolutely, and unable to understand how Mr. Paul had still been in the pub when they had left, and they had immediately left to go home with no delays. No one had passed them in the car park or overtook them on the short time that they were to get to that part of the road that the car had crashed. On getting details with the police together, it appeared that this is the really strange part, that there was 15 to 20 minutes of unaccounted time. So they have no idea what happened with that time. Even after 50 years of time passing, they still cannot understand how their friend got to that spot before they did. So could the sightings of this hitchhiker in his 70 clothes be Mr. Paul? It is said that tragic events lay down energy imprints in the area that they occur. So I'll just go to explain to you that the front of the pub is here and it runs along the side of the road. They would have come in from this direction because Chard's up this way and gone into the car park. So coming from the road itself where you can see overhead, this is the way that they would have come in from Chard into the car park. Now, this is the car park quite relatively newly decorated and done up, so it probably wouldn't have looked exactly like this in the 70s. I should imagine that the car park would have stopped here. So they would have parked somewhere in this area here, and the door to come out of the main entrance would have been over here. So they would have come out, got into their car, reversed out onto the road, straight, turn right here. And it was only a matter of about here that the car was in the hedge. For me, I've recounted that. I've walked those steps. That would take no less than 3 minutes to get from where they were sat to the car onto the road. Yet the gentleman who they left remaining in the pub, still finishing his pint, never was seen coming out into the car park, never seen leaving through here by their friends before they left. Yet he managed to be in the hedge with his car up there. It dumbfounds them today, and they don't understand what had happened. I will leave you with that one thinking. Now, some of you may have seen this story before. It's called The Disappearing Male. As you'll agree, most of the reported road ghosts seem to have occurred in the depths of darkness, and the protagonist in the story being a spectre of years gone by or an indescribable being. In this case, which I'm going to call The Disappearing Male, it's a personal experience of mine that I had just outside of Yeovil in Somerset, in a place called Higher Odcombe. This was neither at night nor in the terrifying oldie worldy sight of many phantoms in front of me. It was a bright, clear day in the afternoon in 2015, and I was travelling home alone by car from Yeovil through Higher Odcombe, going towards Chinook Hollow. And as I approached the crossroads at Ham Hill and Camp Road, I reduced my speed. Let me go and show you some of the sites here. So I was coming up through here, through Old Road, past the village hall, to this part here. And this is where the incident took place. And I just want you to have a notice there that there's nothing to the left-hand side, no houses, nothing. It's just pure fields. There's this one property here on the corner, which you'll see in a bit more depth. So again, this is at the top of the road with Ham Hill Road, Higher Odcombe, Camp Road going this way, and this takes you to Ham Hill. And this is the crossroads that I was stopped at. A little bit more in depth, this time from a car height view. And this is the wall of the house that you could see that the male had walked through or walked from. But there was a high hedge on this side here and a low wall here. And I was pulled up here fully at a stop so that I could pull forward. And at this point, this gentleman started to walk across this area here. So he was a young male, very slim, average height, and he was wearing modern clothing. He was wearing a black hoodie, sweatshirt, and dark jeans, and his hoodie was pulled up fully over his head. His hands were pushed deep into his pockets. So already that's showing you that he's not somebody who's wearing oldie, worldy clothes. He's wearing modern clothing. And his hands were deep into his sweatshirt pocket, and he was walking with purpose across the road. His head was looking down, and he didn't look up to check to see if any cars were coming. So I looked left, then I looked right, in the readiness to pull off. And when I looked left again, the male had disappeared. Some of you are saying to yourself, and? Well, there's nowhere for the male to go. You can clearly see I had full vision of the roads to the left, straight ahead, and to the right. And he definitely didn't make it back to me because I would have seen him. So I'm sat here. He couldn't have gone in anywhere. These hedges, over 10 foot, it's up on a verge. So I would say probably 15 foot tall. And I'll show you a video in a minute so you can actually see from car height just how tall these are. So there's nowhere that he could have gone. He completely had vanished right in front of me. I sat there because there was no cars behind me, not moving, just staring at where this male had been walking. And I was trying to see where he'd gone. I didn't want to pull out of this junction and not knowingly know where he was and hit him by accident. So I was really looking to make sure that I could see that he was safe and not in the road. Very perplexed by this and shaking my head in confusion. So let me just show you a video of this male. Again, you can see how tall the hedging is from the roadside. So there's no entrances in it at all. It's just straight hedging all the way down. It's animal proof. So apologies in advance for the dirty windscreen, but I tried to react this, and I'd like the Oscar nomination, please, to go to Martin for the best acting role of the road ghost. So we're going to run that one for you. So this is the same idea. I'd like to top this road today on this video. When it's recorded, I'm going to turn left for the purpose of showing you the hedging. I've been walking across the road. I've turned left. There's the man walking across the road. I've turned right to check the traffic. I've turned back left again, and he's disappeared. Nobody there. The purpose of this, I'm going to down this pathway, down the hedges for you so you can see there's no brakes. See the flex is saying, no idea what happened to this chap. Right, so there is a corroboration. So when I arrived home, I immediately started to search the newspapers and online for any recent loss of life along this stretch of road. One accident did flag up. Again, I'm not going to disclose the details of this chap through respect for his family because it was fairly recent times. Now, fast forward to a discussion that I was having with my neighbour in 2021. And as she listened to me recounting the experience, she said, I've heard a similar experience from somebody that I work with, a colleague of mine, but I'm not sure if it was that place or another nearby place called Holy Tree near Ham Hill. So it's just on the other side of the hill, or if it was exactly where I had mentioned to her in Higher Odcombe. So my neighbour, I did ask her work colleague if he could clarify the area that it was that he'd seen this incident. And what happened is he said that he had been travelling home at night. So it wasn't the daytime, it was a different time of day. It was at night, and he had a car full of friends with him. And there was 5 of them, and he saw exactly the same thing at exactly the same point. And all 5 of these males had, said that they had the same experience. So there's the discussion with my neighbour on 2021. Similar incident. Neighbour asked her colleague and confirmed it was the same spot. I have actually met this chap since, and we have talked about this in depth, and he has corroborated totally that this area and this incident happened one night late when they were returning home from a night out. So I cannot explain away what it was that I saw. But it's good that I've got corroboration from somebody else. Obviously, it's given my experience greater weight to my own personal experience. And that just goes to prove to you that sometimes we don't go looking for unexplainable experience. We stumble on them by pure chance. And that's my part of Road Ghost for you for this evening.
Oh, wow, thank you very much. That's pretty awesome. I guess it ended there with the video. That was pretty fun.
Yeah, so this evening, we have the wonderful Christian Lander, double part of the tag team. And for those that don't know, Christian Lander is a filmmaker and a producer driven by an insatiable curiosity for the mysteries lurking beyond the ordinary. As the creative force behind podcasts like Phenomenal Nottinghamshire and Our Curious World, he spent years as a producer and a host, weaving in captivating tales of the offbeat, unexplained, and 14 realms. From a young age, his boundless wonder of fueled quirky discoveries and strange encounters happened. A proud member of the Association for Scientific Studies of Anomalous Phenomena since 2011, Christian joined the committee in January 25, elevating his passion for the peculiar. Recently took part producing the Seriously Strange magazines and Beyond the Anomalous. So Christian's a regular voice for today's News Talk and Pulse Talk, unpacking current affairs and geopolitics. He also lends his talents as a voice actor in Star Trek animated show. When not chasing stories or crafting immersive soundscapes, Christian roams the globe with cameras in hand, producing travel vlogs that capture the strange, the beautiful, and his quirky obsession. Can you guess what it is yet? His quirky obsession, guys, is photographing eccentric lampposts in a pursuit he cheekily calls lamppost porn. With a deep love for audio horror and chillers, a flair for the unusual, and a gift for turning curiosity into connection, Christian recently presented From the Sea He Came, and briefly, it was an essay exploring mermen, folklore surrounding the British Isles, followed by the latest dive into road ghosts tonight. So without further ado, Christian, tag team partner, off you go.
So I'll tag out to Will Ospreay there. So let me just share this. So I've make sure I can show the right screen. Okay, I do hope you can see that. If you could give me a nod, will you give me a yes?
Yep.
All right, cool. So you can see that. Okay. So I've got my notes in front of me. I've got my presentation to the left of me. So I promise I won't keep you long. I've got 10 slides I want to go through and some fun stories to share along the way. So, I mean, Caroline encapsulated the story of the ghostly hitchhiker legends quite well in her talk there. So ghostly hitchhiker legends, the vanishing hitchhiker stories, are a staple of global folklore. And those roots go back centuries, of course, but they have peaked through the 20th century with the rise of automobiles, of cars, and so on. So these tales typically involved a driver picking up a hitchhiker, usually a young woman, often in white, who vanishes from the vehicle and later revealed to be the ghost of someone who died on the road. And this motif symbolises the blurred line between mortality, living and the dead. You have the eerie allure of rural and lonely roads, the foggy English country road, dusk-filled vision in front of you, golden field fading into mist, and somehow there's a hitchhiker there who's looking for a lift, puts a thumb out, you pick them up, she gets in the car, you can feel the weight of the car, wait till they get into the car, only for them to vanish a little while later. So 3 of those stories that you may well be familiar with that kind of popped up instantly into my thoughts when we were putting this together is the White Lady of Norstead Church. She was a famous tale from Norfolk. There's the A38 hitchhiker from Devon, who is a ghostly girl in a blue dress, been reported there since the 1960s. And Bluebell Hill Phantom, that's probably the most famous road ghost in Maidstone. This urban legend is a bride-to-be who vanished from a car on her way to her wedding in 1965, and apparently is still being picked up pretty regular today. Drivers pick her up and she fades as she nears the crash site where she once died. So I went to my own archive of my own photographs. I looked at my own archives going, what road ghosts do I actually have ever covered before? Oddly enough, I've covered 3. So I was looking for some regional road ghosts to inspire some interest for this particular talk tonight. And so Caroline and I, we went to Parameet a few weeks ago, back in mid-September, and there was a lovely lady there, very nice, very kind, and she spoke about a case regarding Bessie Shepherd, Elizabeth Shepherd, and we're going to come on to that in a little while. In her exploration of that, she was very passionate, very emotive in her presentation about this Nottinghamshire road ghost. But when she explained it, I was a bit like, so what she's actually done here, she's actually combined elements of 3 different accounts that I'm actually very, very familiar with. And thankfully, she was receptive to the origins of these 3 separate stories and acknowledged this, and in her enthusiasm had combined them. But this was interesting because actually this creates something that perhaps as investigators we come across all the time. That is, it's almost creating new folklore or new narrative, or adding levels to stories that already exist. They're expanding, they're changing, and they're morphing somewhat. So when it came to this one, I wanted to explain those three particular accounts and pull from those sources. Jenny Burton, this particular story here. So my introduction to this particular individual is a local group. They comprised of a merry, plucky band of people, and they held a gathering in the Horse and Groom in Hucknall. And a part of that presentation was the account of the Jenny Burton road ghost, and whose family and descendants still live in Hucknall. If you can imagine what Nottingham looks like, Hucknall basically is a satellite town that sits into the north and a little bit to the east. And if you were going between Nottingham and Mansfield, that would be the main town you would hit in between those two spaces. So the area has been substantially built on since Jenny Burton was alive back in the late or mid-1800s. At this particular time, this image you're seeing here now, there's a long, thin road that goes up quite through the middle of that picture. That's Nottingham Road. Now, along Nottingham Road, for those keen-eyed viewers, there actually is a road on the right-hand side called Jenny Burton Way. If you were to continue at Nottingham Road, just past where that little icon is in the centre there, there's Broomhill Road on the right-hand side. Now, when Jenny Burton lived in this area, this was only called Broomhill, and Broomhill basically consisted of where the school playing field is there, along to roughly where Jenny Burton Way is there. That was a curve to the hill, and basically she had a cottage on there. Actually, there was a number of cottages. One particular one of the 5 was hers. So we're going to come back to this a couple of times, I believe. So Jenny Burton's Hill was obviously named in proximity to their venerable old lady's cottage. I found this on Nottingham History, and its earlier name was Broomhill. So this is what she looked like. So she literally is the archetypal character that is what potentially a witch would look like, which may have led to some interesting crossovers. In the talks I've gone to, they often refer to her as one. Now, at this time, let's talk about Jenny Burton, or actually her real name is Jane Burton. Now, at this time, or shortly after she moved to Hucknall Torkard, as its full title is, she was the first child of Joseph, and she was born in 1781. She went on to have 1 child and then had another 7. So at fairly regular intervals between 1784 and 1797. Her husband, Joseph, he was a cottager, but however, he died aged 49 in 1808. And from that point on, Jenny, then lived as a widow, and she moved to this cottage. So in 1820, she then became a tenant of this cottage. She was paying £20 a year to live on this land, the cottage and the outbuildings, which had actually been erected by her ancestors. On the 15th of April, 1846, J. Simpson, who was a wandering artist, sketched this particular picture. And I've spoke to her descendant about 10 years ago, actually, and he confirms in some family pictures this is indeed what she kind of looked like. She really did have the longer nose. She wore the hat. She was always out in the fields, still working up until a very late age indeed. She also, from this particular picture, smoked a clay pipe and also had a dog. She is described quite often as being an eccentric widow, and she obviously lived on this farm. As you can see here, there's the accompanying note from Knott's History that says that she was paying £20 a year. Now imagine paying that today to live on a farm. You've got to look after it yourself. So this, if you were to come to Nottingham, you would find in Hucknall, this is the church that's there, and she was a bit of a local celebrity, as it were. Now, she lived until the age of 95. In the 1841 census, it shows her living aged 85 at the time at this property on Broomhill Lane, where she and her son Joseph lived. And then she died in 1847. So Hucknall Church is home to some interesting, notable individuals and figures, including Lord Byron, number 5, and his daughter Ada Lovelace. So, of course, the tech world has been celebrating this past week as a centenary. Also, Ben Court, the World Championship boxer from 1950, is in this particular place too. And, of course, the Lady of the Hour is, of course, buried here. I find it quite interesting, the fact that there's a park in Nottingham called Arnott Hill Park, and there's a sculpture there made of metal, and there's a plaque on that, and it says the average age of a person in 1850 in Nottingham was just 20 years old. That's the life expectancy of a person was 20. Absolutely remarkable. But in this village here, I got a list again from Notts History, and it shows, you can see all these people here, Mary Hunt, Elizabeth Shaw, Richard White, all lived to a grand age of all 90 plus. So I think their diet must have been very, very good, or it is an insight to their affluence and the environment that they were in. So, but we want road ghosts. I know you want road ghosts. So here, let me present to you what a road ghost is. So there's a number of intertwining stories here that also exist. So this group, along with some local historians, had cited to me that this lady died in 1874, where she accidentally cut herself with a scythe while chopping grass. It's a gruesome way for a person to go, particularly when you are an active elderly lady at the age of 95 living on this farmstead. It is said that a silhouette of this particular figure appears in the centre of Nottingham Road, as you can see here, and it always appears to have a hood, and it's carrying a scythe. Now, this particular figure frightens drivers in their headlights, seemingly appearing and disappearing. Admittedly, there are also other urban legends around this, and sometimes they have been embellished. It is not the only ghost in the same space, and the reason why I want you to discuss a bit about her background. In a 2009 locally produced pamphlet that I found in the Nottingham Library in Hucknall, I found in my research some news clippings and letters from local history. And one of those was an account from David Burton, who is her descendant, who explains that there are a number of accounts that have been attributed to his relative. When she accidentally cut off her head, oh sorry, that is one of them too, that's one of the myths, is that she accidentally cut off her head, not just a cut. Two members of two major Hucknall families, the Challons and the Lowes, are also direct descendants of Jenny Burton, and they have memories that they shared to him in this magazine, in this locally produced pamphlet. One of that she was a memory of an old widow, that she was murdered and strangled to death. More than one person says that in the family that they have recorded this information, although another person couldn't verify that. Also, there's said to have been another accident on Jenny Burton Hill where the lady was knocked down on a horse and cart. A murder story also is part of this story too. We have Mr. Frank Betts, who lived at Butler's Hill, which is an adjacent hill, in the 1930s. He recalls that he was told not to go to Jenny Burton Hill because he was told it was haunted by a woman who had been murdered, and told that if he did, the ghost would get you. Another Hucknall resident, Mrs. Ethel Winterburn, remembers how when she was told to stay away from Jenny Burton's Hill because there's a ghost there of a lady who hanged herself. Ethel's great-grandma used to tell her of a young woman who hanged herself from a tree after her boyfriend had jilted her and she was pregnant in the 17th century, no, 19th century. Such stories are typical. They are passed on generation to generation. They sound unlikely, if not, they may be true. That how and why did they originate, but they all appear to congregate around this particular place. So we don't know which ghost may be the one that's appearing in the road. They could be an amalgamation of all these stories that are placing this character to be there. But they all add to the mystery of what is the ghost of Jenny Burton Hill. A bit further down here, there is an account actually on the paranormal database of this particular place. And I'll read it for you right now. So the location, Hucknall, Nottingham Road, also known as Jenny Burton's Hill. It's a haunting manifestation at a time reported as 22:45 on the 5th of October, an anniversary, pretty much, from 1986. After driving his car into a woman dressed in black 1950s clothing, Brian Tweedy stopped, fearing he had killed a pedestrian, and looking around the area, he could find no sign of the woman he believed that he drove into. And this car also had suffered no damage. Tweedy claims that there were cars ahead and behind him on the road that had stopped pulled over, and they also said that they believed they had hit someone and had stopped at the scene to check the damage. So all this in the same space and the same location. Let's move on to another interesting location around Nottinghamshire. This is located in Calverton, George's Lane. It's a winding route and it's unlit. There's an eerie set of trees that arch over the road there that extends to the village town of Kelvedon. It's in the northeast of the city, and it's home to a number of reports of spooky goings-on. Now, of the reports that I could locate of a mysterious figure in a black robe that has been seen several times since the 1930s, it's with a hood masking the face, except for this figure has a large hooked nose that appears to have been spooking people who are walking after the clocks chime midnight. There's a figure in the reports from the 1930s where a Mr. Lawrence Bardil ran away for some distance and then was proceeded to be ill for a number of days, and he believes that he was infected or had been passed on through evil from this particular entity that had chased him along this road. In 1977, reports of an eerie hanging mist was seen along this road too. Swirling black vapours were also reported to officials, and country roads were prone to thick patches of fog, perhaps not paranormal. But in 1992, villagers Bill and Alison saw a pair of legs, just legs, no upper body, just legs, clad in white riding breeches running across the road. Whilst trousers running across the road, it appears that I wasn't the first to have a Nottingham nightcrawler. But it was put down in the local papers to be maybe a misidentified swan or a duck, a nightcrawler. This happened to occur as they were travelling on a bus, moving at speed as they were coming along this road. It is said, although no one has actually confirmed it to me personally, but people talk about the fact that the taxi drivers refuse to use this road. There are a number of claims to this, and they all appear to share the same motif. That is, a blacked, cloaked figure that would appear in the back seat of the car. When looking in the rearview mirror, only for them to quickly turn around or stop the car to look around behind them, and there's no one in the back seat any longer. It's not a safe road decision to make, taking your eyes off the road during a winding, unlit, fast-moving route. But a number of individuals who I know very well from Paranormal Investigations East Midlands, they did a number of runs of this particular road, and they discovered a number of interesting aspects. One is that they found a figure clad in dark clothing at the side of the road, just stood in the road, and they had to swerve to avoid him. This man was homeless. He was a vagabond, and he had an encampment in the bushes, so just tucked away along this slip of a road. They also found what they called, what Sean referred to me as, he says, it looked like a visual matrixing phenomena, as he described it to me. He says, when you go around some of the sharp bends, the arrows there, as you can see running on the top right in the corner, had long extended road signs. And if you happen to be watching them while you were turning the corner at speed, it looks like it's moving in an animation. It looks like there's a figure there of the frames of a person stood still in the right corner of your eye. So there may be a freaked out moment of misidentification. But with the guy who was homeless, the vagabond guy, they said they actually got out of the car, walked up to him, and actually poked him to see if he was real, not a ghost. And then he actually went to their camp and had a bit of a chat and a cup of tea, apparently. The third road ghost that I'd like to talk about is on the A60. And this ties into the account that the particular lady I met at the Parameet was very passionate about. It is the story of Elizabeth Shepherd, Bessie Shepherd. I'll keep the story brief because it's quite a popular story and many people are aware of it. But local folklore and the occasional newspaper reports today even describe this encounter. She is said to be a ghostly female who appears on the A60, which is the main through road between Nottingham and Mansfield. Some drivers swerve to avoid her, only to watch her dematerialise or vanish. Sometimes it's a fleeting glimpse of someone stood at the side of the road. Other times it's a figure in the road, and as they approach, she disappears. Now, this stone, this particular image here, this is from the Nottingham Hidden History team, their photograph. I put that up there because Frank Erb of the Hidden History team recently passed away. The stone memorial stands as a bit of a sombre testament. It was actually erected in memory of Elizabeth Shepherd of Papplewick, who was murdered at this spot by Charles Rotherham on the 7th of July 1817. She was the age of 17. The tragic tale unfolds as thus, that Elizabeth was seeking employment in Mansfield as she had walked from Papplewick, which is just outside Hucknall, which actually is still quite a considerable distance. It's about 12 miles. She was last seen leaving Mansfield at 6 p.m. at night. She had new shoes on for her job interview. She had a cotton umbrella that was made very colourful. Unfortunately, the following morning, her body was found in a roadside ditch and her skull had been smashed in by a hedge stake that was lying nearby. The same day, Charles Rotherham, who was a war veteran from Sheffield, was seen drinking in the Hut Tavern in Newstead. Shortly after the murder, and it's believed that Elizabeth had crossed paths with this gentleman at an unfortunate moment, and Rotherham had searched her body for money and had found none, but took the shoes and the umbrella. That night he attempted to sell them at the Three Crowns Inn in Redhill, but finding no buyers, he left the shoes behind, but did go on to sell the umbrella in a village south of the city in a place called Bunny. He was arrested in Loughborough, and Rotherham confessed fully, offering no motive other than a desperate need for money. On the July the 25th of 1817, Charles was hanged at Gallows Hill, but there was a lot of sympathy for Elizabeth. There was a bit of a surge in the local community. This girl clearly was trying to get work, trying to earn money. She was only 17, very young, and it prompted a number of local businessmen to come together and to fund a memorial, a rare stone, if anything. Is actually one of the only kind of death stones that depicts the person who died and the murderer on a picture that's available to go and see. Some speculate this actually may have been a distraction, perhaps to obscure other motives. There's one book and the particular presentation I watched at Paranormal that suggested that Elizabeth might have been pregnant, she might have been seeking support, and then she was killed to shift the blame then onto Rotherham, perhaps hide for the act. However, I kind of lean towards Occam's razor with this. His confession and a lack of funds were a simple opportunistic crime. The road has been widened a number of times, and the memorial stone has been relocated accordingly. But this disturbance has led to Elizabeth's spirit perhaps being unsettled, leading to her reported appearances. Ghost hunting groups now do seize the opportunity. They visit the stone and they nudge it and they move it, trying to invoke the apparition of Bessie Shepherd to appear in the road. But we also it seems to be an anniversary haunting, a phantom road ghost. But her apparition appears to be triggered, allegedly, by those who are trying to invoke her presence. I did come across a particular record or account, really. It really ties into this quite nicely. So by a gentleman called Richard Morley, who on Boxing Day last year wrote on the Our Local Mansfield website, back in 1987, I started to restore this memorial. I found that there were 3 stones in all, the footing stone, a base stone, and the memorial, and I believe this memorial is in its original position, despite the rumours of it being moved when the road got moved. And the reason I assume this is because I have old black and white photographs showing the position before the roadworks took place. I worked a sunken slate panel onto the face and have relettered the inscription for it, simply to ensure that it is readable for many years to come in the future, and every year I return to the stone to maintain it. In February 2017, I fixed an ornament on top, as early reports suggest that there was an ornament fixed to the stone when it was first erected. However, it went missing before a photograph could be taken, so I designed my own. At the beginning, age 20, I knew nothing about stonemasonry until I read the sad tale of Bessie Shepherd in a book, and on visiting the stone for the first time, I took an urge to take up masonry and restore the stone that was in a terrible condition, and I intend to maintain it as long as possible. So this gentleman, Richard, has been maintaining the stone since 1987. It now actually has a metal plaque on the front of it that has replaced the stone one that you can see here. So I'm going to round this up in just a minute. That's the kind of 3 major road ghosts that have a bit of a tie together. But I'd like to include this particular account because it's going to go under the radar. So it's by author David Haslam, author of this particular book that I have here, but it's not an account that's in here. This is Ghosts and Legends of Nottinghamshire, and it appears on a GeoCities website and is cited by the BBC that is also no longer available. And it's called The Menace on the Roof. It's on the Great North Road, which again is this particular road. Just here what they're talking about. A tale told in the coaching days that has been updated and is still being told today. It talks of the highway maniac. A coach was travelling along the Great North Road with a young married couple aboard. Midway between towns, the coach lost the wheel, and the coachman decided to walk on and to the next stop and summon help. The couple inside the coach were quite happy at first, but then darkness then began to descend, and as the night grew cold, impatient at the long delay and fearing his wife could get a chill, the husband decided to himself to go out and walk up the road a little way and watch for the coachman, where there was still light to see by. The lady sat alone, keeping warm as best she could, and after some time she became anxious for her husband's return, fearing the inky darkness growing outside. She was soon assured when she heard voices approaching. Her relief turned to alarm as they then became shouting and the sounds of running men towards the coach. Someone then jumped on the roof of the coach as it then began to sway alarmingly, and then loud thumps threatened to bring the roof down upon her. Scrambling to the windows, she was dazed by the light of many lamps, and she shaded her eyes with her arm. And then a voice called, Miss, you must open the door slowly and walk towards the light. On no account must you look behind you. Trembling, she opened the door on unsteady legs and walked towards the silent lamp bearers. Then, almost to them, she turned to look back at the coach anyway. And there on the roof, caught in the lamplight, crouched a man whose features were horribly twisted with rage and his eyes were wild red, and that of a raving lunatic. As she watched, the snapped chains from the manacles on his wrists began to be flayed about, and he banged her husband's severed head on the roof of the coach. There's a modern story about this, of course, that it's someone whose car has run out of petrol, yet the story remains the same. And as my final story is a place I visited just last week. Last week I visited a veteran researcher of the Fortean of the Paranormal, Anthony James, and I discovered a remarkable account of somewhere that is just not 2 minutes from my house. So he's a former postal worker, and of course has been replete in the paranormal for many, many years, with the East Midlands UFO Research Association and before. As I said, he was a postal worker for more than 20 years in this community. So Anthony delivered regularly to this particular location here. This is Hemshill House. Now, there was once a grand residence. It's been there since 1400s. It was once a very grand residence, but has been reduced to disrepair by the year 2000. There he met an elderly occupant, nearing 100 years old, and her son, and curiosity led him to ask about, is there any ghosts here, any haunting stories? And her face lit up with the eagerness to share. She recounted 2 eerie encounters on the long road to the hall, now overtaken by what is the A610 and newer developments. Now this story is thus. So late one evening, when closing the gate, she heard the clatter of hooves and the rumble of wooden wheels on gravel. A regal black carriage, pulled by 2 muscular horses with lanterns casting light, thundered towards her. An imposing tall figure in a long black 2-pointed riding coat with gold fastenings descended backwards from the driver's bench. Their head not present, just their clothing. And the scene then vanished moments later, as she assessed what was occurring in front of her, just to go up to the carriage, but it vanished. 6 years later, under similar circumstances, she was out. The galloping horses returned. She had, this time, it was a much more vivid scene, she said to him. This time, the lanterns of richer light illuminated the scene, but once again, the headless rider descended again, crunching on non-existent gravel. As she approached, the vision faded once more. Anthony, animated in her vivid telling to him, cherished these visits, and until she passed 5 weeks later. Her son moved away, and the house was left in ruin. In fact, it looked like that for quite some time. I think it's about 2006. It looked like that. Richard Hunt, he's a historian, his wife Felicity, they bought it up and have been actually blogging their renovations of the house. It's now in a very, very good condition. But yeah, it goes back to like 1497, far older than anyone could have thought. Now, this concludes our journey of road ghosts in my regional area. I'm aware it's 8 o'clock, and our presentations have gone on for about half an hour each. I'm going to close this up now. I want to stop sharing, and I would like to listen to everyone else's ghost stories and road ghosts, because I know our audience here has been chomping at the bit to share their story. So I'm trying to think of the best way. Perhaps put your hands up and come on and join the conversation and come and share your accounts, or at least one account of a road ghost that you know of or somewhere in your vicinity that you would like to share with everyone here. Rob Gandy, I can see you're waving away with enthusiasm there. Come and share your road ghost story with me.
Well, I've actually got a lot, as you well know.
I do.
But when somebody asked Carolyn what she was driving at the time of her incident, so I put in, was it perhaps a Rolls-Royce Silver Ghost? That then prompted me to think there is a good story about a Silver Ghost, which published in the Ghost Club Journal a couple of years ago. And it is one of my favourites, I must confess. So I've got the book here.
Brilliant.
So if you'll permit me to be reading it and put it with my dulcet tones, then yeah.
Please do. Please do.
Okay. I got the story from a close friend of mine and his brother, and the story was actually told by their father, the late father, several times over the years. So I'm going to call him Harry. Around the end of World War II, Harry's uncle Bill was a businessman who largely earned his corn by driving a van around the Shropshire countryside, providing farmers with whatever their needs might be. It should be borne in mind that at that time, most farmers rarely left their farms, and so having someone visit them regularly to ask if they had any requirements, from groceries to machinery, then delivering the goods that they'd ordered would have been something of a godsend. It was back in 1946 that Uncle Bill was in a small village a little way from his home in Wellington, and that's Wellington, Shropshire. As was his wont, he stopped for a pint in one of the pubs and got talking to the landlord, who mentioned that the local doctor had died some time before. Apparently, no one liked him because he was a miserable so-and-so and a bit of a skinflint. His house, where the doctor's widow still lived, was rather grand and not too far away. Seeing an opportunity, Uncle Bill asked for directions and drove up to the doctor's house. Anticipating that the widow might be short of cash, he asked her if there were any items of her husband's that she might like him to take off her hands. There were a few items she identified, and while looking around, Uncle Bill noticed a large outside garage or barn. Naturally, he inquired if there might be things in there that might be unwanted. The building had been the domain of the doctor, and so his widow thought that this may well be the case. Consequently, she allowed him to go in and have a look around. This he did, and at one point he spotted what might be a car underneath the large tarpaulin. Pulling the cover off, he was amazed to see a pristine Rolls-Royce Silver Ghost from the 1920s. Uncle Bill couldn't believe his eyes and quickly returned to the widow and asked if the car was for sale. She explained that it had been her husband's pride and joy, and she could not bring herself to sell it. Uncle Bill persisted and offered her £50 cash, which was a lot of money just after the war. He offered it there and then, knowing full well that a car dealer back near his home would take it off his hands for around £150. Lovely jubbly. She didn't want to sell, but after some charm and negotiation, Uncle Bill managed to persuade her and seal the deal. They agreed that he should return the next day to pick it up. Upon getting home, he contacted Harry and his stepbrother Joe and asked them to help him pick up the car. Harry would have been 20 years old, with his stepbrother being around 10 years older. The idea was that they would drive out to the doctor's house together with Uncle Bill's car, and then Uncle Bill and Joe would drive the Silver Ghost with Harry following behind in his uncle's car. Upon arrival in the late evening, Uncle Bill handed over the cash to the widow and took the keys to the Silver Ghost. By the time they were setting off, it had gone dark. Harry was seriously impressed by the Rolls-Royce and made sure that he stayed close while at a safe distance as they travelled down the twisting country lanes. Suddenly, The inside of the silver ghost lit up in a kind of bright, misty light, and then a few yards further on, it careered off the road to the left and into a hedge. Harry was bewildered to see Joe and his uncle leap out of the car and start running hell for leather up the lane. Unsure as to what had happened, he followed them and picked them up when they came to a stop. When he asked what was going on, they both blurted out that they had been travelling along as normal when the inside of the car had lit up and they saw a man sitting in the middle of the back seat. They were too frightened to go back and agreed that they should go straight home and then come back to pick up the car the next morning. Upon their return, the silver ghost was still in the hedge, but when they backed it out, they were astonished to see that there wasn't a scratch on it. It was still immaculate. None of them could fathom how this could be the case, but as the car seemed to be in first-class condition, Uncle Bill and Joe nervously got back in and drove it home, followed by Harry. They parked the car outside Uncle Bill's house. It was later in the day that Uncle Bill's girlfriend needed to use the outside toilet, which took her past the car. She was stunned to see a man sat in the middle of the back seat. Immediately, she went back to get Uncle Bill to check who might have broken into the car. Understandably, this shook Uncle Bill, who hurried out to the car. There was no one to be seen. The car was empty. He now decided that enough was enough and, accompanied by his nephews again, drove the silver ghost all the way back out to the doctor's house in Shropshire. When the widow opened the front door in response to Uncle Bill's urgent knocking, he demanded that she return his £50 and he would give her the car back. Her reply was something along the lines of, "You bought it, and so you're stuck with him," suggesting that she was somehow aware of her husband's wraith and its connection with the car. Despite trying every argument he could think of, Uncle Bill ultimately resigned himself to owning a haunted car. However, all was not lost because he remembered that he could quickly pass the silver ghost onto the car dealer that he knew and make a nice little profit. Therefore, upon his return home, he rang the dealer and arranged for him to come round to look at the car the next day. But during the night and part of the next day, the car started up of its own accord on several occasions, but no electrical fault could be traced. The dealer was suitably impressed by the Rolls-Royce and handed over the £150 straight away, agreeing to pick it up the following morning. When he went to bed, Uncle Bill would have felt rather satisfied with himself for having successfully got himself out of this predicament. Unfortunately, he and his girlfriend were woken in the night by light and heat coming from the outside of the front of the house. The silver ghost was on fire. Despite their best efforts, they could not douse the flames, and so there was little left of the car in the morning. Was the car haunted by its one careful owner, who loved it so much that he couldn't bear to share it with anyone else, even after death? Was the miserly spirit of the doctor so determined that his beloved car should not find itself for sale in some tawdry Shropshire car dealer's lot that he somehow set it on fire? We will never know, although we can be pretty certain that there was a great deal more heat generated when Uncle Bill refused to give the car dealer his £150 back. Thank you.
That's great. A great story.